Hello. This is a sermon for the Maori season of Matariki that's held here in New Zealand. It's an ancient Maori festival that marks the turning of the year, the Maori New Year, and it's based on the reappearance of the star cluster Pleiades that comes back over the horizon, is visible in this midwinter period. And so in this period of Matariki, Maori traditionally remember the dead and give thanks for the dead and those who have gone on before us, and also have hopes and dreams and plans for the future. So it's that season of the year now, at this time in June, and this sermon is to try and mark that in some way, and therefore I'm talking about cosmology today rather than out and out theology. So let's see how we go. Because I'm taking a rather big risk in this sermon, because rather than dwelling in my comfort zone of theology, which I've studied and taught for many decades now, I'm going to venture today into the unfamiliar territory of science. Now, science is well above my pay grade, so I hope I have understood what I have read. We have become accustomed to the idea that religion and science do not mix. They are like oil and water, we are told. But this is not necessarily the case. The first scientists were often deeply religious. Sir Isaac Newton was a Christian. Copernicus, who first described the Earth going around the sun, was a monk. Steno, who first described fossils and the archaeological layers within the soil, he was a bishop. But when science leapt across into modern industrialization and commerce at the time of the Enlightenment, the divide opened up between religion and science. Those seeking to build a new world of trade and technological progress were not interested anymore in a human's spiritual capacity, but were only concerned with people as an economic unit of production and consumption. I don't believe that the entrepreneurs set out to be atheistic in their quest for industrialization. But with industrialization, we stopped going at the pace of the natural world, or according to the natural cycles of human beings. But instead, we had to go at the pace of the machines, which took over our world. And such were the many achievements of modern science that it looked as though the world could indeed manage perfectly well without God. After about 300 years of apparent divergence, the streams of science and religion are slowly coming back together. Now, these figures I'm about to give are from the United States Academy of Sciences, so they'll be higher figures than you'd find in European averages, and probably higher figures than we find here in New Zealand, but they give an illustration. 51% of American scientists claim to be theists, and 41% agnostic or atheist, and a higher percentage of believers in the younger age groups. And among American medical graduates, 76% claim to be theists. So, why the change? Why is faith rising in the world of science? Well, cosmological evidence has been a big factor in shifting opinion. There are other branches of science, of course, that have influenced this growing confluence, but I will confine myself today to the cosmological evidence. So here comes the science. Hold on to your hats and keep your fingers crossed that I get it right. Since 1927, we have become accustomed to the idea that the universe started with the Big Bang, and that the universe is expanding from this point of origin. This is universally accepted among scientists, and there are a lot of very reliable proofs to back up this theory. The Big Bang is said to have happened 13.8 billion years ago. Now, scientists may have accepted this theory, but they have a problem with the Big Bang theory. And that problem is that the Big Bang means that the universe had a beginning. If there was a beginning, there was a time when the universe did not exist. There was a time when there was nothing, not even time or space. There are several scientific models for what the universe might be. Some have suggested a universe that constantly bounces from expansion to contraction. Others have suggested a multiverse, a theory according to which our universe is just one universe among trillions and trillions of universes. Others have ideas of a string of higher dimensional universes, each popping out of its predecessor. But whichever mathematical model you may favour, they all have the same problem. They all require a beginning. This is because they all require the idea of an expanding universe. And an expanding universe requires a beginning from where the expansion started from. All universes with a Hubble constant of greater than zero, that is, a rate of expansion greater than zero, must have a beginning. And a beginning seems to demand a God hypothesis to account for it, as nothing can do nothing. Otherwise, it is not truly nothing. Someone had to do something, somehow, to create something from nothing. Scientists do not like the idea of a beginning because that means that there must be a creator, some power beyond time and space that created everything that went into causing the Big Bang. What you may not know is that the person who first put forward the Big Bang theory was George Lemaitre, a Belgian Catholic priest and physicist. So the Big Bang theory has always been a thoroughly Christian concept. So how have some scientists avoided having a beginning to the universe and therefore been able to continue to deny the existence of a creator? Well, in order to avoid having God in the picture, you have to first get rid of the idea of having a beginning. And the only possible non-theistic explanation is an infinite multiverse, without any beginning, because it is infinite in time. It has always existed. Such a scientific model has been very popular in recent decades among scientists. But the associated problem with the infinite fractal multiverse is that this model means that every human being is a Boltzmann brain, or a brief brain. A Boltzmann brain is a brain that springs into life for a moment fully loaded with memories, understandings and consciousness, that it exists within a universe of other sentient beings. As you pop into each new universe, you see, the you goes into that universe with all the apparatus, all the history, all the knowledge, all the experiences of you in this universe. So it just pops as a ready-made brain in the next universe. So with the Boltzmann brain, you are a fleeting point of consciousness. Just one you out of many, many millions of other yous who live in other universes. But everyone else, everything else you perceive within any of those universes is just your imagination. So perhaps I'm preaching just to myself after all. While scientists have used this explanation to show the universe can exist without a divine creator, they don't like this theory very much either, because it means that science too is just imagination, because that's all we are. And all their empirical truths on which science is based are also nothing more than a passing moment of subjective consciousness. Stephen Hawking was the most famous atheistic cosmologist of recent times, but Stephen Hawking and Thomas Hertog published a paper in 2018, Hawking's last published paper before he died, which said that it is impossible even for an infinite multiverse to produce a universe like ours. And if other universes do exist, they will have to be few in number and very much like this one. And such universes must also have a beginning because they are expanding, or they couldn't exist, because multiverses demand expansion. According to my sources, it is rapidly becoming the scientific consensus that every cosmological model, multiverses, string theory, expanding and contracting universes, all of them require a beginning. And a beginning is impossible without some agent transcendent to space and time, what we Christians would call God. For anyone still listening at this point, I have a question. What happens when you put your hot cup of tea down and you forget it? Yeah, it goes cold. It goes cold to match the temperature of the room it is in. If you put it in a fridge, it would go down to the temperature of the fridge. This is equilibrium, and it is the most natural state of affairs. All systems strive towards equilibrium. But life and the universe could not exist without disequilibrium. Creation needs differences in temperature between stars and space, disequilibrium between chemical elements, differences in pressure between one place and another, because only then is change possible, as the universe seeks to achieve equilibrium. Only through a universe that encompasses change is life possible. This is why the universe could not be infinite in time, because it would end in equilibrium. It had to have initial disequilibrium to produce the Big Bang. And the fact that this universe that we're in is still expanding shows that it still has disequilibrium. And that is only possible if the universe had a beginning. This is all based on the second law of thermodynamics. Now, the chances of having disequilibrium at the Big Bang, apparently cosmologists and mathematicians have some sort of notional figure in mind as to the chance of there being disequilibrium at the Big Bang. This is above my pay grade, I remind you. Well, that number is known as the Penrose number. And that Penrose number is 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 123. If you try to write that number out in your normal decimal system, that number would be so large it wouldn't fit in the universe. Mind you, the person that made this statement didn't tell me how big his writing was. Well, this degree of probability equates to the chances of a monkey randomly hitting the keys of a typewriter and producing the entire works of Shakespeare at first attempt. So, even if we are fortunate enough to have found a monkey that can type out Shakespeare for us to produce the Big Bang, there are many other requirements after the Big Bang to be met before life can actually exist. And these requirements for life to be are called fine-tuning coincidences. Fine-tuning coincidences. There are 20 universal constants in the universe. These are numbers for maximums or minimums, for unchanging and unchangeable ratios, or absolute numbers that have never changed since the Big Bang. The speed of light is one of the 20 constants. Gravitational force is another. And if you change any one of those constants by the tiniest fraction at the Big Bang, then life is impossible. And remember, there are no laws before the Big Bang that predetermine what those constants are going to be. How are they going to be fixed? Take gravitation as an example. If you altered the gravitational constant by a tiny, tiny percentage of 1%, sort of 0.00000 and so on, 0.49 zeros, then a 1, that degree of 1%, either higher or lower, then life would not have been possible. The universe would have either been one continuing explosion, no stars or planets ever formed, or would have fallen in on itself into a black hole. And all 20 universal constants have to hit precisely the right level by chance. Sir Fred Hoyle, one of the most ardent atheists in the field, said, "A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics, as well as chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question." Hoyle later described the chances of life being by pure chance as being like a tornado going through a junkyard and assembling a Boeing 747 ready for takeoff. Amen, and happy Matariki.